Welcome back to Brothers Fab N Adventure.
In today's episode, we're going to continue working on this Arctic quad track that we're trying to bring back to life with this motor swap that we're doing.
There's still a lot to figure out, but hopefully by the end of the episode, we can get it running.
We'd love to see it moving under its own power with any luck, so you're going to want to stay tuned and see what happens.
So first things first, we got to figure out where this exhaust goes because there's a lot of stuff that is packaged around it.
And as you can see, our first problem is becoming quite apparent because this is turned down and the muffler needs to be attached to that, which would put it almost in the track. That's just not going to work.
So we're going to start with hacking this off and maybe turning it around and see what we can do.
That's that.
I was going to trim up this exhaust piece to align the muffler, but I'm going to need something to mount it to. So I've decided I'm going to switch to mounting the radiator in hopes that I can mount this muffler off of something there too. Now that the muffler is out of the way there, here's where we want to mount the radiator. And I only have two little points to mount it to. This bar out here and then a little piece of angle in here. So I'll get back to you when I come up with something to mount this thing. Got the first part of my radiator mount here, so I'm going to tack it up. So I got the frame to mount the radiator all welded up. Just got to drill a couple more holes so we can mount it in the machine. We're waiting on the grommets to actually mount the radiator to this frame. So we're going to switch gears for a minute and look at what to do for the intake.
Due to the extremely tight clearance of everything here, particularly the gearbox shifter and the intake, we can't just bolt the stock airbox on in place where it used to be because it would run into this gearbox. So what we're going to do is we're going to use these 45-degree elbows and we're going to extend out where the airbox ties into the intake just a little bit to give clearance for everything. Use a coupler to attach these two together, and then we're going to have to figure out how to cover this with some hydrophobic skin so that we don't get water into the intake, because that would be bad news, obviously. It's kind of like a funnel right into the motor. I'm going to go ahead and cut this boot right where the edge of the tape is here so that it matches the one that we already cut down, because we like where that's going to sit. Meanwhile, Justin's going to get a couple more holes drilled in this frame here. Now that we got our hose cut down, we're going to add this coupler on the long end of it, and that's going to allow us to tie it into the stock airbox. Go ahead and get that attached on both of our hoses, and we can attach the airbox to it, and then we can mount it to the intake. Now that these couplers are on both tubes, we can go ahead and work them onto the intake. This is the tightest fit of all of this. Kind of going to work those on individually, and then the intake should get on a lot easier comparatively. That's why I don't have it all assembled here, because it would be pretty tough to work both of these tubes on at the same time. Might have to slip your hand in there to help the couplers seat, because basically how the intake is going to work out for us here. We don't want to have it picked up too much where it's super close to the exhaust, and this might get melted, but we don't want to let it sag too much that this is sitting on that plate there for the shift rail. We can kind of smooth this out a little bit to get a touch more clearance, but not much. So there will be a little bit of compromise.
Got the lower radiator mounts all in there. They're held into place, so I'm ready to tack them. And then I'll pull it apart and straighten them out a little bit more. Get them squared to this bar here, and then we'll weld them out. Alright, that should be good. Now we'll take it all apart. Got the bushings all out of here, so now it's ready to weld out.
Built in the mountains where the wild runs free. Two brothers in the garage making steel come alive with heat.
Now I'll flip over to this other one.
Sparks light up the shop like a storm in the night. Engines crack and thunder, fuel inside our veins. Hit the
That
trail.
one was a little further away, but that one looks pretty good. Now we can flip it over and finish it out. On these top parts, I'm just going to weld the inside parts here to leave room for the bolt. that'll be a wrap for that.
Another one of the headaches that we're going to have to deal with on this project is going to be the throttle cable, because originally the throttle cable just went to the handlebars of the snowmobile. Obviously that's a lot shorter distance than getting to the cab like we need to do now. Also, the original throttle cable coming from the cab has no way to attach to the current motor. We're going to try our hand at making a custom one. We've never really done this before. We did try to do it for our Bombaki Snowcat a long time ago, but it just didn't work out real well for us, and we ended up ordering one. Fingers crossed that we have a little better idea how to do it now. We actually did get a throttle cable, like a DIY throttle cable kit, so that should help a little bit.
Unfortunately, it didn't even come with the right barrel, so I had to kind of make my own by using one of the cable end caps and drilling a hole halfway through it.
So this is going to be like a little extra step of DIY to the project. Justin did a bunch of research, and we think we have an idea what we're doing now, so we're going to find out.
We'll find out. So what I got here is my little end. It's not the straightest. We can straighten it a little bit here. Jam-packed with flux. We're gonna fill this little guy with solder down here. And once that's a bunch of solder, we'll dip this guy in there.
And hopefully that'll fill the hollow parts inside of the barrel there. Have the wire doing a 90-degree turn in there to help it be held in a little extra. We're just getting that piece of copper end cap heated up here. We're gonna put some solder in there. Justin, you probably want to put your safety glasses on.
Oh yeah.
Well, molten metal in the eye is not a good idea. Holy crap. Probably should have had some gloves on for that.
Two brothers side by side.
That was violent.
And adventure, we own this ride.
What's it look like? Does it seem like it filled? Let me take a few tries at this. I mean, that side looks okay.
That actually worked out pretty well for us. This is what we started with. It's hollow. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. But
yeah, that side you might stand a chance of seeing it.
It's hollow. So I drilled a hole in the side of it, and then we put the wire through and put a 90 on it. So it came out the side here.
And this is the one that came off the snowmobile that we're trying to match.
I think we did pretty good.
Yeah. We had to clean it up a little bit with the file so that it would rotate smooth in the assembly. But
all in all, that really wasn't too bad. We just used a copper end cap.
Yep. For our
solder bowl. So that's making a throttle cable. We just got to finish doing the sheath and adapters for it.
Justin actually got the top mount all done for the radiator here, so that thing is totally mounted on its own. Pretty much done now too.
We got our adapters on our radiator here. This one will have a temp sensor which will tell the fan when to turn on, and this lower one, this will just be a feed to the heads.
But yeah, that's how that bracket turned out that he made to hold the top of the radiator in there.
One of our next things is figuring out where the rest of the components go. We're going to start with one of the bigger items, which being the 2-stroke oil mixing tank. That's a tongue twister. But it was attached to the chain case on the snowmobile, so it has a lot of extra meat here. I'm going to go ahead and trim it off and see where we can mount it up.
Tell you what, there's no going back from that one. Now he's just flipping it over so he can kind of connect the two lines, but he's got to work his way around this little guy here. Oh, there we go. Look at that. Justin got the gas tank out of here, and it's opened up some new space that we haven't been able to see before. I know some of you were curious about how this thing works, and this gives you a little better idea. You can actually see the drive shaft now. It goes into some sort of a CV at this junction here. Pretty skinny little drive shaft. We got a number of things going on right now. I think we're going to work on getting this oil tank mounted next, and Justin's probably going to keep tinkering with the throttle cable. We'll show you how that turned out in a second here, or at least where we're at with that now. It's been put together a little bit more since you last saw it. This will be the start of our first bracket to hold that oil reservoir there. I got my bracket all made up here, got some holes drilled. I tapped the lower holes, and I got a nut on the upper hole because we don't really have a lot of room to get a wrench in on this side. We're gonna go ahead and hold it in place and get this bracket tacked on. That way it'll be pretty solid and we can figure out our next couple brackets. I'm working on the next bracket here. Got it all marked out for drilling. And Justin is working on the throttle cable. Gotta give you a little update on that.
We got the one end on here, and now we're feeding the main cable through so we can figure out the length of it.
We took this elbow off of the snowmobile throttle cable, and that helps get it right where we want it and attached how it was originally attached. I got the new bracket all made and bolted on, so now we can bolt this to the other bracket that's already on. Kind of guessed on that one.
Looks pretty good there.
It's alright. Got them all welded out. They turned out pretty good, so I'm going to go ahead and get it mounted back in there. That's how they look. And there it is. It's all back in plate. Pretty sturdy. Not exactly rock solid, but it doesn't need to be. So here's the current throttle cable situation. We've got the line run through the sheave. We got another end on this side. And we've just figured out the length so that we can achieve full throttle. Now we can cut down this cable and crimp the end of it to keep it from moving, and we'll have a functional throttle. A closer look at the exhaust system here, and our plan is that we want to run the muffler vertically and do a 90 at the top before it hits the cover. Unfortunately, like a lot of other stuff on this project, the fit is about as tight as it can get, and we're going to have to eke every inch of height out of this muffler that we can to make this fit before running into the cover. So the plan is we're going to cut the top part off of the muffler here, and that way we can inset the 90-degree bend as low as possible in there. And then we're going to take this lower piece that we had to rotate vertically anyway. We're going to cut a little wedge out of it so that this will be flat and this will be vertical. So that's the plan. I think I'm going to get to cutting the top of this thing off and seeing how compact we can get this before we start modifying the bottom piece.
Like we made it all the way through.
Oh, look at that.
Oh.
There you
goes
go.
The baffle.
And now we got a little extra width in there.
If we want to cut it shorter,
sit, the better.
Yeah.
Basically. I think we got this 90 as low as it can possibly go. In the orientation we think we want it, so we're going to give it a couple tacks.
Alright, cool. Perfect.
That'll help us not have to imagine things so much. We're going to go ahead and cut this lower part of the exhaust.
Kind of to that line-ish.
Yep, slight angle, and see where that gets us to. It's kind of hard to figure all this out because everything's just kind of floating in space. Maybe we can figure out some blocks to set some stuff on, but we'll get to that later.
Got this exhaust piece all trimmed up. It got a little steeper than we wanted, but we're running out of room everywhere, so this is how it'll work. We went ahead and double checked everything, the way it's leaning, the total height, and we're a 1/4 inch under what we need, so it should be pretty good. We're gonna go ahead and get it tacked in. That'll work for now. We're gonna have to pull it off, take this heat shield off before we can really weld it out. We think this is where the first exhaust mount is gonna go in. So we got another exhaust hanger mounted here to the radiator frame. Right there. Now we're working on the bracket that's going to hold the exhaust right here. Last thing we got to do is locate this spring hanger that connects the muffler to the expansion chambers. And after that, all we got to do is weld it all out and drill a couple holes for the hangers. We went ahead and pulled the exhaust all back apart so we could get our holes drilled and finish all the welds out. So we took the shield off this expansion chamber, and now we can go ahead and weld this seam. Gonna get to it now. Now I'm going to go ahead and get these hangers welded onto the old exhaust hangers here.
Stealing sparks, living out the dream. Rich and right. Yeah, the trails are guide. Grab a wrench, hit the throttle, time to wait and ride.
Now we just got to drill them to the bigger size and tap them out, and we'll be good to go.
Now that we got all that done, we're putting it back together just to kind of show you how it turned out, and then we're going to move on to something else. But this is how we decided to hang the muffler. So you can see we got the...
It's got a little movement, but once it's all sprung together...
Once the other parts of it are all held together, it should keep it in check. And there's our other mount. Bracket there, just bolts on. He made another little mounting plate that we tap. It's welded right there. We got it all back together. We'll give you a little demonstration of how solidly it's mounted, but also not solid mounted, right?
This has a little bit of movement. This has a little bit of movement. So everything should work together. We got springs down here, a spring here, and then the 4 springs on the collector.
We went ahead and moved this cover in here to check our clearances, and we did pretty good. Now that we got this exhaust all wrapped up, the next big hurdle on our list is the fuel system. So we started looking into that, and in the process, we were looking at the airbox, and I wondered if we could flip it around, because these holes, you know, you should be able to, so that we could get this sensor further away from the exhaust as well as the vacuum lines. We went ahead and started looking into that before we moved into the fuel system, because we realized there should be some tight clearance issues in here with the wiring and that sensor. And in the process, we realized we also needed to run the wiring to make sure that we could get everything plugged in where we needed to, which for the most part we can. We're still going to have to extend a couple things, but this should work out. We just had to relocate the fuel system a little bit forward to where we thought we were going to have it, but this should all work out really nicely. And now we're going to move on to making some lines. We showed you how to do some AN lines in the past. These are going to be a little bit different and a little bit easier, so that should be nice, but we're going to show you how to do those too. That should be one of the next things on our list. We also need to mount the regulator. This thing isn't mounted yet, but we're going to combine the mount to hold this throttle, whatever this thing is.
Throttle valve of some
throttle
sort.
Valve, yeah, so there should be some kind of combined mount to hold these two. But some of these lines are pretty short. We don't know how short we can make them, so we're going to start with that.
So to make the fuel lines, it's pretty easy. You're just going to wrap the line with masking tape real tight, cut it off with a cutoff wheel, and then you're going to peel it off. And you're going to take your new end here and take your 2 parts. This one's just like a little nipple, but this one is threaded on both ends. So we're gonna thread this in. We're gonna start it with a little screwdriver. So once you got it started, then you're gonna turn it counterclockwise. And just keep turning it until you see it bottom out on this little lip down in here. Then you use the screwdriver to straighten the little rubber part in the middle out. And then just take your next piece, and I usually use a little spit to lube it up here. Be good. And then you're just gonna shove this one in here, spin it clockwise. Then once it starts to get tight by hand, I usually put it in the vise here to help hold it. Take my wrenches, just tighten them until it bottoms out. And that should be a done line. Boom. And then I'll have to figure out where the regulator goes over here to make the next line. This next one, I'm just using the scrap cutoff piece and trying to make it as short as possible, so it'll be pretty short there. Nice and short. I need to mount the regulator and this throttle positioning valve, so I'm gonna kind of do them both right here. Everything's getting pretty tight here. I think I like where this fuel pressure regulator is sitting. I just spaced it up with some bolts, so I'll tack them down to the frame here. To mount this throttle valve thing off the fuel regulator, I got some more cardboard aided design here. It won't be quite this big. I'm gonna make it out of angle so it can grab that fuel pressure regulator.
2 brothers, middle fingers to the grind. Torches blowing in the Colorado night. Graveyard kings with a loader and a dream. Turning rust into a war machine. Sea-War Snowcat tracks in the dirt. No rules, no bosses. The smell of red shirt. From ghost towns to 14ers, we attack. Brothers Fab N Adventure, never looking back.
Alright, that should be a good start for this first part. Flip it over. Do a line here. Little cleanup and drilling some holes and it should be good to go. Got this bracket all made and in there. Kind of hard to see. There we go. Jason's just tacking the expanded on there.
We're working on making a bracket to hold this overflow reservoir for the coolant system, and it's all ready to tack together here, so I'm going to go ahead and get that done. Go ahead and finish welding that out, and then we'll just have to drill some holes for this.
Pretty nice. Now that I got most of the other fuel lines done, just waiting on a couple other parts to adapt it to this tank. So in the meantime, I'm gonna work on getting this sender from the snowmobile into this tank, because this tank had a manual one right here, and we'd prefer it be on the dash so you can see it at all times. Gotta work on getting this ring into this hole, so we'll see how it goes. We cut the ring down so it fits in the hole, and now we gotta reposition the piece that holds the sender. So we're gonna tack it on real quick in the vertical position here, and then we'll test it.
I got this bracket for the reservoir pretty much done, and then I decided I'm gonna tie it into this other reservoir, so should work out pretty good. I'm gonna get this welded out now too.
Okay, so I got this piece all trimmed up. It fits down in here. The problem is this has to go on it, and this doesn't fit through there, and it has to fit through here. So I have to try to put it all together inside the tank, so we'll see how that goes. Don't know how well it's gonna go here.
We'll get back to you guys in a minute. We're gonna brainstorm this a little more.
Yeah. Ended up trimming this thing down just a bit more so we can work it through this hole.
Yeah, you kind of cut this end off of it basically.
So now we should be good to attach this, which just kind of pops on there and then slides up. There
Clicks
it goes.
into place. So yeah, you can see how tough that would be to do inside the tank when you can't get your hands in there.
Right.
That just wasn't very realistic, I guess, but hopefully this will work. We did a dry run with the bracket anyway, so we know that works at least.
Right. Let me try to feed this
through and back up the other hole. Yeah.
Okay. There we go.
Okay.
And then maybe we can just drop this guy down like this.
Straight down in there.
Work it in there.
There you go. Basically just let it drop and fish it back out.
Yeah.
You want those pliers?
There it goes. Got it. Now the wires are gonna come up here, and this is just gonna sit down there like that.
So that just sits on the lip there. Detach our wire. Screw this cap down on top of it after we drill a hole through for the wires, I guess.
Yep, because we still got to put a return in that too.
Oh, we got to put a return in this too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now that we got the sender all figured out, we need to put the return bulkhead into the same cap, and then we can put the tank back in there and figure out the rest of our line lengths.
So this is how it turned out. Should work pretty good. We just got to add the line and drop it in.
Got our return all on here, so we just got to get it down in the hole. There we go, and that's how it'll be.
Got our final fuel lines done. The fuel system is pretty much wrapped up, and I figured I'd take a moment and explain kind of how the setup is here. We basically have the pickup that goes into a 100 micron filter to protect the pump, and then after the pump it goes into a 10 micron filter to protect the injectors. It goes from that filter to the regulator, and then it splits off going to the injectors and the return to the tank.
One of our last challenges is getting the dash mounted inside the cab so we can see our fuel levels, warning lights, and RPMs. Well, I look around in here. This looks like a pretty cool spot, so I'll get to making some brackets and get back to you. All right, got the brackets all made for that and for the ignition, so we'll go ahead and get them tacked in. And this is where the ignition is gonna go. Now we're gonna weld it out.
That'll be a lot cleaner without that in there.
Now that we got the dash all welded in here, it brings us to our last big hurdle, which is the wiring. We got to get this harness here from inside the cab back to the engine.
Another thing on the wiring subject is we got these coils mounted, and we're going to have to extend the harness to them as well, and I'm sure a number of other things too. But if you're anything like us, you're probably not the biggest fan of wiring. We're going to spare you the pain of watching that process.
I did get the computer mounted, which is a pretty big thing on the wiring subject. So in theory, we could scab some of the wiring together and get this thing to start, but that's not how we really do things.
As much as we wanted to see this thing rip, and I know you guys did too, our timeline was set back a little bit by that crazy windstorm and 5-day power outage you guys saw in our last video.
Also, it's the driest winter in Colorado's recorded history, so hurrying to test this thing with 3 times the power on dirt just doesn't seem like a good idea.
Yeah, we'd probably end up tearing the tracks to shreds if we did that.
Yeah.
At this point, it's not a matter of if it's going to work anymore. It's a matter of how well it'll work and how good it'll look. So that's going to be all for this time.
So stick around until next time where we rip this thing back apart, give it some paint, and do some of the finishing touches.
Hopefully we'll have some snow by then.
So we can give it the test drive it really deserves. Thank you for watching.
Please like, share, and subscribe.
Until next time
On
on Brothers Fab N Adventure.
Living louder than the voices in your head. Brothers Fab N Adventure. This is who we are. Quad track screaming Arctic cat hard. Cheekbone 40s ripping red rocks apart.